isn't it?
All right, so a question popped up just to reiterate again. How do you get a graph into Word? You just copy it from Excel. Do Control-C for copy, or if you wanted to right-click, you can go to copy. All right. Copy, and then paste special, enhance meta file, paste. Get rid of what now? Oh yeah, so let's just say you want to get rid of the space. You can go, just wherever you're at, you go to this little arrow here, and it says add space or line spacing options. Don't add space between paragraphs. But there's also this option here, add space. The default setting for Word is, you'll have to remove this. So click on remove, and it'll get rid of those spaces. All right, I'm going to delete this out. Someone just asked me, what if I wanted to do subscript or superscript? Like, what if I wanted to type in, 2 times 10 to the minus 7 centimeters. I'm just typing in a number. You can just left click and select that number, and then there's this x squared up or down. If I want to go at superscript, I do that. If I want it below, I have that. If I want to type in oxygen, O2, I just click on this thing, O2. If I want to do it in Excel, sometimes you have to, let's say I had this, if it was per milliliter, I'm going to have to select directly on that text inside. I can double click and go to font and pick superscript or subscript here. If I wanted to have that in a cell like that. Yeah.
Can you repeat how you do it in Excel again?
Yeah, so in Excel, if you want to do superscripts or subscripts, you just have to type in the number and you go to font. There's this little corner here, or you can just right click on that and format cells, and it'll take you directly to the superscript or subscript. All right, let's see. What if you had to graph this by hand? Would you rather do it by hand or do it this way? Like, I mean, I've spent, a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours now, showing you Excel. But if I did this without explaining it, I could do this in 2 minutes, right? But because I'm explaining it and sort of trying to walk you through it, it's taking a lot longer. There are some directions in the lab manual here that you should read through to do it by hand on page 6. And there's graphing paper on the very last page of your lab manual that it intends for you to use for this specific lab exercise. So just FYI, I am going to ask you to do it by hand as well. Just for this one graph, it's asking you to do it for an exercise 1. It's not that hard, but it's just to give you an appreciation for Excel if you've never used it. So I do want to show you something else, just so that I've got everything covered. If you look on page 8, click in here. Page 8. Notice how it gives you, if I move this up, it's going to want you to graph this as well. Alright, I showed you how to do series, add in a second series in the same graph. You'll need to do that for this. So this will be your first series, and this will be your second series. And notice how it shows you what the graph should look like. See how it forecasts forward and then backwards for this? So I showed you how to do that. Okay. So you're going to do two series, in that case. Again, here's the figure caption below because they put this in Word document form. And then the last part of this exercise has to do with statistics. And I briefly mentioned standard deviation in the lecture last time, but let me show you how to do it in Excel. I'm going to show it to you in Excel, and then we're going to do it by hand, just so you can see just how awesome Excel is. Okay. If you look at this graph with the table here, you can add a second sheet to your file if you want. Okay. So I'm just going to do it in a separate sheet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in this data into Excel. Alright, and I'm going to just type it in exactly as you see it. So, mass, 7-Up, grams. And I suggest you do this too. Mass, diet, 7-Up, in grams. If you want at least to do decimal places, you can use to select the data, use these little icons here to change the number of decimal places. Now for me, I don't like graphing with rows, I like graphing with columns. So, you might like this. Okay, if I want, I can select the cells that put the numbers, actually. Just select everything, even the labels. And do Control-C for copy. You should see the data being selected here. Alright. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick two columns I want the data to go into. and go to paste special, and I get this menu from paste special, and I'm going to pick this option here called transpose, and I'm going to pick OK, and it just made my data come out in columns when it was originally in a row. What do you think? Pretty cool, huh? Instant replay? Alright, so I just selected it. Alright, and then I'm just going to pick a pair of columns, or a couple cells I want to go in as far as columns go. I just said copy. Actually, I just want to cut this out. So if I go to cut with the scissors, alright, and then I'm going to just pick two rows, or two columns I want. And again, paste special. Oh, it's not letting me do paste special. Alright, Control C for copy, and then go to paste special, and then there's this good old transpose option. And there's other options here too. When you do paste special, if you want, you can just paste in values without the formatting, or you can just paste the formatting only. You can add some operation. You can link cells between sheets. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff. Here's another kind of interesting one: skip blanks. So what if, like, for example, one of the cells in this data set was blank? It would automatically squish it together. Okay, but we don't need to do that in this case. All right, so here's that. What if I want to insert or delete a row? All right, maybe you don't know that yet. I'm just going to select both the rows and right-click and delete. All right, and that's taken care of. Again, I don't like all this. I like things to be centered. And I like things to be wrapped to text. I want two decimal places, don't I? So we're not going to graph this data, we're just going to do standard deviation. How would you calculate the average of this? I'd be willing to bet some of you probably bust out your calculator right now, type them all in, and then divide by the number of data points you have. Or I would say just do it in Excel. Okay, I'm going to underline these. Just do it in Excel, all right? So you want the average to be at the bottom here? Here's what you do. Go to this icon up here, this backwards E symbol, and click average. All right, and press enter. And there's your average.
One more time?
So click on the cell where you want the average to appear. Go to this backwards E. You can click sum, average. There's lots of other functions here, but I'll just show you average. And if you want to take the average of the other column, just take the little square right lower corner and drag and click, and that clicks and drags the average over to either column. Now notice, if I zoom in on this, and if I double click in there, look at the formula. Alright, it says equals average and then comma C5 to C14. It says C5 to C14 because those are the numbers in those columns. It's column C from 5 down to 14. And that's how Microsoft Excel speaks to itself when it's doing the formula. So anytime you want to do any calculation in Excel, you always have to start off with saying equals some function. Okay. If you don't start equals, then Excel doesn't think you're doing that, it thinks you're just typing in whatever. If I click in the other column, look how it's D5 to D14. What if we want to calculate the standard deviation of that? Standard deviation of this data, you would type in equals STDEV for standard deviation, comma, and then left click and drag the data for that column. And then press parentheses to close the loop on that function, and press enter. I have a lot of digits here, so I'm going to get rid of some. Now, what if you get this that shows up? What happens then? It just means that the column is too narrow to show all the digits. You see that? If the column is too narrow to show all the digits, that means it'll just do this to you. So you can either widen the column or cut down on some of the digits.
Can you repeat that again, please?
So if you get this,
How to get the standard deviation?
yeah. So just clicking in here, equals STDEV parentheses, and then left click and select the cells you want, and then parentheses to end so that the software knows you're done with that input. So you can do average and standard deviation. What if you wanted to do percent RSD here too? Relative standard deviation. There's no, there might be a built-in function for it, but I just do it by hand. So for percent RSD, say equals, okay, the average, excuse me, no, not the average. The standard deviation divided by the average. Alright, and then you can either say times 100, you can add times 100 to this, in which case you would say this in parentheses times 100. If you want to do multiplication, you got to use the star symbol for multiply. That means multiply in Excel. All right, there's your percent RSD. So you might remember what I said last time, but the lower the percent RSD, the more precise the data. Not necessarily the more accurate, but the more precise the data. So if I want to do that for the other data set, okay, check it out. Just select these and drag and click all of them over and you're done with the other data set. Alright, so just to reiterate, so we typed in all the data. Okay, the first cell underneath that all is the average. The second one is the standard deviation. It's equals standard dev, same cells. Third one is percent RSD, C16 divided by C15, which is the same as saying the standard deviation divided by the mean. That's what I'm doing here.
What does this stand for again? Like
Percent relative standard deviation. So it's how the standard deviation is relative to the mean. So if the standard deviation is really small, if the data is really precise, that means the percent RSD is going to be very small as well. And then multiply by 100 to get percentage. Okay. So here's the thing, you don't have to input all these formulas in again for the other data set. You can just drag and click on this little lower box and then drag it over. Okay, and that does the same thing for the other data set. So which data set is more precise? The one for the Diet 7-Up or the one for the regular 7-Up? The Diet 7-Up has more precise data, right? Which data set is more accurate? It's a trick question. We can't answer the question.
Why?
Because we don't have the published value to compare to. We don't have an actual value. Right? We don't have an accepted value. Right? We just have data. Right? We don't have a real, true value yet. Yes. I'll show you.